The HOA fined me for riding Dakota across my own ranch. They thought their rules controlled the trail, until I discovered their entire neighborhood shortcut existed only because my family allowed it. Welcome back, everyone. Before today's story begins, I want to thank each and every one of you for being here. If this is your first time on the channel, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you'll always know when a new story is released. Your support means more than you know. Every like, comment, and subscription helps this channel grow and allows us to keep sharing incredible stories with viewers around the world. And before we begin, tell me this: where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments. I always enjoy seeing how far these stories travel. Now, grab a comfortable seat, relax, and let's dive into today's unforgettable story. You understand you're not allowed to ride that animal here, don't you? I heard Meredith Sloan before I saw her. Dakota's ears turned toward the voice as we came around the cedar bend at 5:47 that morning. Frost silvered the grass along Holloway Ridge Trail, and every breath from Dakota's nostrils rolled into the cold like smoke. Then headlights flashed through the trees. A silver SUV sat sideways across the gravel. Meredith stepped from the driver's side wearing a cream jacket, dark slacks, and boots that looked too clean for ranch dirt. In one hand, she carried a red envelope. I pulled Dakota to a stop. "Morning, Meredith. This isn't a social call, Grant." She walked toward us and held out the envelope. I took it from the saddle. Silver Pines Community Association. Official violation notice. Unauthorized livestock activity on recreational pathway. Fine, $750. For a moment, I thought I'd misunderstood it. You fine me for riding Dakota? You're using an association recreational corridor in violation of community rules. I looked down at the gravel beneath Dakota's hooves, then toward the pasture fence. 20 feet away stood an old survey marker sunk into the earth beside a cedar post. Beyond it, weathered boards carried lettering my father had painted years ago. Holloway Ranch, EST 1978. I looked back at Meredith. "This is my ranch. This pathway serves Silver Pines. That doesn't make it yours." Her mouth tightened. "Residents have used this trail for decades." "Yes. Then you understand its function." "I understand exactly where I'm standing." Two joggers appeared behind Meredith. She stepped aside and let them pass. They waved at me. "Morning, Grant." "Morning." Neither received a violation. A woman walking a golden retriever came next, followed by a man pushing a stroller. All of them crossed the same gravel. All of them continued toward the old cattle gate leading to Pine Creek County Preserve. Meredith pointed at Dakota. "Livestock creates safety and maintenance concerns." I almost laughed. Silver Pines advertised this route as a nature trail. My family had run horses here before the first Silver Pines Foundation was poured. Instead, I folded the notice. "Show me where Silver Pines owns this road. We have established community access." I asked about ownership. "You can raise your concerns with the board." I just did. Her expression cooled. "Additional violations will result in escalating penalties." Dakota shifted beneath me, one hoof grinding softly against the gravel. I rested a hand on his neck. Meredith turned toward her SUV. Before she climbed inside, she glanced back. "I suggest you stop riding here until this is resolved." The engine started. She drove away, leaving two dark tire tracks through the frost. I stayed there. In my palm, the red envelope looked strangely bright against my worn leather glove. $750. For riding my horse. On Holloway Ranch. I continued north. At the cattle gate, I stopped again. The steel was rusted around the hinges, but the lock still hung beneath the latch. Silver Pines residents passed through because my family had kept that gate open for years. I reached into my coat for my keys. A silver pocket watch came out with them. Dad's. The case was scratched from decades of ranch work. I opened it. 5:58. For some reason, I remembered something Thomas Holloway used to tell me whenever people confused kindness with obligation. Never confuse an open gate with an abandoned boundary. I looked from the watch to the gate, then back toward Silver Pines. Meredith thought she had just fined a rancher for violating her trail rules. What she hadn't considered was much simpler. Before Silver Pines could regulate this road, somebody needed to prove Silver Pines owned it. The first thing I found was a photograph of my father standing where Meredith had parked her SUV. It was buried in a cardboard box beneath old feed invoices and veterinary records in the ranch office. Thomas Holloway looked maybe 50 in the picture, one boot resting on the bottom rail of the cattle gate, his hat pushed back against the afternoon sun. Behind him was nothing but pasture. No silver pines. No landscaped entrance. No community trail signs. Just Holloway Ranch. I set the photograph beside the red $750 notice. Then I started digging. By 8 that morning, the office smelled like dust, coffee, and old paper. Dakota stood outside the window, occasionally bumping his nose against the fence while I opened folders Dad hadn't touched in years. Silver Pines hadn't always been our neighbor. 21 years earlier, the land east of us belonged to a development company. Their original subdivision plan gave future homeowners access to Pine Creek County Preserve through a public entrance almost 3 miles away. Our ranch road offered something better. A shortcut. I remembered the developer visiting Dad. I had been 27. The man arrived wearing expensive boots that had never seen manure and spent 15 minutes explaining how valuable neighbor connectivity would be. Dad listened from the porch. Then he asked, "You asking to buy part of my road?" "No, Mr. Holloway. We're asking for neighborly passage." Dad looked toward me. That phrase amused him. Neighborly passage. Eventually, he agreed. Not because Silver Pines had leverage. Because Dad believed fences could mark property without turning neighbors into strangers. For years, it worked. Residents walked through. Kids rode bicycles. Retired couples headed toward the preserve every morning. Nobody claimed the road. Nobody told us how to use it. And nobody sent my father a bill for riding a horse across his own ranch. I opened another folder. Inside was an early Silver Pines brochure. Pine Creek Preserve access provided through neighboring Holloway Ranch. I read it twice. Neighboring Holloway Ranch. Not Silver Pines Trail. Not association property. I photographed the page. Then I found an old survey. The boundary line ran exactly where I remembered it, following the cedar fence before turning north beyond the cattle gate. The entire gravel section Meredith had called a recreational corridor sat inside the Holloway parcel. I walked outside carrying the survey. Morning sunlight had burned away the frost. Near the trail, I crouched beside the old marker I'd noticed earlier. The stamped number matched the survey. I brushed dirt from the metal with my thumb. Still there. Still where Dad had left it. My phone buzzed. An email from Meredith. The subject line read, "Notice of continuing noncompliance." I opened it. Silver Pines expected immediate cessation of unauthorized equestrian activity pending resolution of my violation. I looked over at Dakota. He was standing beneath a cottonwood, completely unaware that a homeowners association had apparently transformed him into a compliance problem. I typed a response. Please provide the recorded instrument establishing Silver Pines' ownership or regulatory authority over the Holloway parcel. Then I attached the survey. Before sending it, I added one more photograph. Holloway Ranch, EST 1978. Send. That afternoon, I returned to the ranch office. There was one box left beneath Dad's desk. Inside were property tax records, correspondence from the original developer, and a thin folder labeled Access. I reached for it. My silver pocket watch slipped from my shirt pocket and struck the desk. Click. The case opened. For a second, I heard Dad's voice as clearly as if he were standing behind me. Never confuse an open gate with an abandoned boundary. I looked at the folder, then at Meredith's red notice. The HOA believed 20 years of courtesy had turned my father's road into their authority. I was beginning to suspect Dad had left behind something that said otherwise. The second red envelope arrived before I finished reading the first agreement. It was stapled to the fence beside my mailbox the following morning, bright enough to see from 50 yards away. Dakota snorted when I pulled it loose. Apparently, we're repeat offenders. I opened it. Continuing violation. Unauthorized equestrian activity. Trail surface impact. Outstanding balance. $1,400. I looked at Dakota's hooves, then at 2 Silver Pines residents jogging past us on the same gravel. Neither seemed endangered. By Friday, another notice arrived. This one added livestock nuisance and interference with recreational access. $2,250. The following Monday brought the fourth. $3,600. 4 red envelopes in 11 days. I laid them across my kitchen table in order. $750. $1,400. $2,250. $3,600. Every time I asked Meredith to show me her authority, she answered by adding money. So I stopped asking her. Instead, I documented everything. I photographed the survey marker from 3 angles. I scanned Dad's property records. I downloaded Silver Pines trail maps and saved Meredith's emails. Then I opened the association website. The homepage showed stone entrances, trimmed lawns, and families beneath tall pines. Under amenities, I found a photograph that made me sit forward. 2 smiling hikers stood beside our cedar fence. Behind them was Holloway Ridge Trail. The caption read, Silver Pines Private Nature Access to Pine Creek Preserve. Private. That word bothered me more than the fines. Silver Pines was advertising my family's road as a private community feature while telling me I couldn't ride my own horse across it. I saved the page. Then I found a downloadable sales brochure. Direct preserve access. Exclusive neighborhood connection. Miles of convenient recreational opportunity. No mention of Holloway Ranch. I compared it with the older brochure I'd found in Dad's files. Pine Creek Preserve access provided through neighboring Holloway Ranch. Same route. Very different language. At some point, provided through had quietly become Silver Pines Private Access. That afternoon, Meredith called. Grant, your balance is now $3,600. I can read. Then you understand this is escalating. I understand you're still avoiding my question. We've already explained the association's position. You've explained your rules. You haven't shown me why they apply to my ranch. She paused. Long-standing use establishes community rights. Does long-standing use establish ownership? That's not the issue. It is from where I'm sitting. Her voice hardened. If you continue bringing livestock onto the recreational corridor, additional enforcement may follow. I looked through the barn doorway. Dakota stood tied beside the rail, tail moving lazily in the afternoon sun. He's a horse, Meredith. He's livestock under the rules. Your rules. Correct. That's the part you still haven't proven. I ended the call. An hour later, I drove into town carrying the access folder, the survey, for red notices, and every document I'd collected. Claire Bennett's office occupied the 2nd floor above an old pharmacy. She specialized in property disputes. I expected her to start talking immediately. She didn't. She read. For nearly 20 minutes. The only sounds were turning pages and traffic below the window. Then she reached Dad's original agreement. Her finger moved down the page. Stopped. She read one paragraph again. Then she looked at me. Grant, who owns the Holloway parcel now? I do. Claire rotated the agreement toward me and tapped 4 words in the termination clause. Terminated by the landowner. I stared at them. She pulled my deed from the folder and placed it beside the agreement. According to this, that's you. The room suddenly felt very quiet. I thought about Meredith's red envelopes. Her warnings. Her $3,600 balance. Then I pictured the cattle gate Silver Pines residents crossed every morning. Claire hadn't finished reviewing the records yet, and neither of us was ready to make assumptions. But for the first time, I understood where the real pressure point might be. Meredith thought the fines were forcing me to obey. She had no idea they were forcing me to read. Claire didn't tell me to close the gate. That mattered. She spent the next 2 days checking the documents instead of giving me the answer I wanted to hear. The deed. The subdivision declaration. Recorded plats. Dad's agreement. Every reference we could identify to the route between Holloway Ranch and Pine Creek County Preserve. On Wednesday afternoon, she called. Come in. Her office smelled like coffee and printer toner when I arrived. 3 folders were waiting on the conference table. Claire pushed my deed toward me. Based on the records we've reviewed, your ranch parcel isn't included in the Silver Pines Declaration. Then she opened another folder. We also haven't identified a recorded permanent recreational easement giving the association unrestricted use of this road. I looked at Dad's agreement. So the 14-day clause means what it says. The permission described here can be terminated by the landowner with written notice. And I'm the landowner. You are. I leaned back. For 11 days, Meredith had been increasing fines as though every red envelope strengthened her position. It hadn't. It had only made me investigate. Claire tapped the table. That doesn't mean we act carelessly. Long-term land use disputes can get complicated. We document everything, follow the agreement, and avoid interfering with anything public. That sounded like Dad. Slow before strong. So we checked. The Pine Creek Preserve had another public entrance almost 3 miles around. Open. Maintained. Accessible from the county road. No emergency access crossed Holloway Ranch. No public roadway would be blocked. Silver Pines residents wouldn't lose access to the preserve. They would lose their shortcut. All right, Claire said. What do you want? I looked at the 4 red notices in my folder. I want them to decide whether this is my property or theirs. Claire drafted the letter. Formal notice. 14 days. At the end of that period, permission for Silver Pines residents to cross the Holloway parcel would terminate unless a new written arrangement was reached. We sent it certified. Meredith replied in under an hour. Silver Pines rejects your attempt to interfere with established community access rights. Any obstruction of the recreational corridor may result in additional enforcement. Claire read the email. Don't argue. I wasn't planning to. For 14 days, I changed nothing. Every morning, I rode Dakota along the same gravel. Every morning, residents passed us. Day 3, Meredith drove by slowly without stopping. Day 7, another HOA warning appeared in my mailbox. I photographed it and added it to the file. Day 11, I inspected the cattle gate. One hinge sagged. I replaced the bolt. Day 13, I bought a new weather-resistant lock and a length of chain. That evening, I placed both in Dakota's saddlebag. On day 14, Meredith found me brushing rust from the gate. She stopped her SUV on the Silver Pines side. What exactly are you doing? Maintenance. Her eyes dropped to the new chain. You wouldn't seriously close this. I checked Dad's silver pocket watch. 4:16. Your notice period ends tomorrow morning. Grant, hundreds of residents use this route. They can still reach the preserve from the county entrance. That's almost 3 miles away. I know. Her face tightened. This is retaliation over legitimate fines. No, this is me following the agreement your board apparently never read. She stared at me for several seconds. You'll regret turning your neighbors against you. I ran the rag across the gate latch. I'm not closing their public trail. I looked directly at her. I'm closing my private shortcut. She drove away without answering. That night, I checked the gate one final time. Chain, lock, hinges, sign, everything ready. Before going inside, I opened Dad's pocket watch. 11:43, 17 minutes remained until the 14-day notice period expired. For 2 decades, Silver Pines had crossed Holloway Ranch because my father believed an open gate meant trust. By sunrise, I was going to find out whether they understood that trust had never meant ownership. At 6 the next morning, I made Silver Pines walk the long way around. The sky was barely light when Dakota carried me toward the cattle gate. Frost covered the fence rails, and his hooves struck the gravel with a slow, hollow rhythm. I checked Dad's pocket watch. 6 o'clock, the notice period was over. I dismounted. For a moment, I simply stood there with one hand on the gate. 20 years of footsteps had passed through that opening because my father had said yes. Then Meredith decided yes meant hers. I pulled the gate shut. The hinges groaned. Chain slid through steel. Clack. I snapped the new lock closed. Then I fastened the sign I'd prepared beneath the top rail. Private ranch, community passage suspended. Dakota breathed against my shoulder. That's that. The first resident appeared less than 2 minutes later. A runner named Mark slowed when he saw the gate. Grant. Morning. What's going on? Silver Pine's permission to cross ended this morning. He stared at the lock. How am I supposed to reach Pine Creek? County in trance. That's almost 3 miles around. I know. 2 dog walkers arrived behind him. Then a woman with trekking poles. Within 10 minutes, 8 people stood outside the gate. Some were irritated. Most were confused. Nobody was trapped. Nobody had lost access to the preserve. They'd lost a shortcut across my ranch. At 6:23, Meredith's silver SUV came fast around the corner. She stepped out before the engine fully settled. Open this gate. I kept one hand on Dakota's reins. Good morning to you too. This is not funny. I wasn't joking. She marched toward the sign. You have unlawfully blocked Silver Pines recreational access. My attorney gave your board 14 days. You cannot revoke established community rights because you're angry about enforcement. I'm not angry. Then unlock it. No. Her eyes narrowed. This trail belongs to Silver Pines. That was the sentence I'd been waiting for. I reached into my coat and removed the key. The silver pocket watch came with it, swinging briefly beneath my hand. I held up the key. Your trail. Yes. I stepped back from the gate. Then open it. Silence. Someone behind Meredith lowered a phone from his ear and pointed the camera toward us. Meredith looked at the lock, then at me. Don't play games. I'm not. I nodded toward the gate. If Silver Pines owns this road, you shouldn't need my key. Her face tightened. Long-standing use creates legal rights. Maybe your attorney should prove that. The board will take action. Then let the board take action. A woman with a Labrador spoke from behind her. I thought this was HOA property. Meredith turned. It is an established community amenity. The woman pointed toward my sign. That's not what I asked. Another resident looked down the gravel road behind me. Does Holloway own all of this? I answered before Meredith could. Check the county parcel map. That changed the mood. People stopped looking at the gate. They started looking at Meredith. She must have felt it too. This closure harms every resident in Silver Pines, she said. No, it inconveniences them. I pointed east. The public preserve entrance is open. 3 miles away. That's why my father's permission was valuable. She stared at me. I could almost see the moment she understood what she'd done. For years, Silver Pines had treated convenience like ownership. Then they find the person providing the convenience. Meredith returned to her SUV. Before leaving, she lowered the window. This isn't over. I slipped the key into my pocket. I hope not. She drove away. The residents slowly followed, some toward home, others toward the county entrance. I mounted Dakota. Behind me, the new chain rested across the old gate. One lock hadn't taken anything Silver Pines owned. It had simply removed something they'd forgotten they were borrowing. And by breakfast, hundreds of homeowners were going to want to know why their HOA president couldn't open what she kept calling their gate. By 9 that morning, Meredith had made the mistake I couldn't have planned better myself. She put it in writing. Claire forwarded me the Silver Pines mass email while I was repairing a water line behind the barn. Subject: unlawful obstruction of Silver Pines property. I wiped my hands on my jeans and opened it. Meredith told residents that a neighboring ranch owner had illegally restricted access to association property and that the board was pursuing immediate remedies. Association property. I read those words twice. Then I sent the email to Claire. Her reply came almost immediately. Save everything. Don't respond. I didn't. The residents did. By lunchtime, screenshots were circulating through the Silver Pines community forum. Greg Foster, a retired surveyor I'd known for years, called me first. Grant, is that road actually on your parcel? Check the county map. I already did. There was a pause. That's why I'm calling. That afternoon, Greg emailed me a scan from an 11-year-old Silver Pines newsletter. The photograph showed a group of residents standing beside our cattle gate. Underneath it, Silver Pines thanks the Holloway family for generously allowing continued trail passage to Pine Creek County Preserve. Allowing. One word. One very expensive word for Meredith. An hour later, another homeowner found an older real estate brochure. Convenient preserve access provided through neighboring Holloway Ranch. By evening, people were posting both documents beneath Meredith's email. The questions changed fast. If Holloway Ranch only neighbors the trail, why do county records show the trail inside Holloway Ranch? If Silver Pines owns the route, why did its own newsletter thank the Holloways for allowing access? And if Grant isn't subject to Silver Pines covenants, why was he fined $3,600? I didn't answer any of them. I didn't need to. For the first time, Meredith was arguing against her own association's paper trail. The next morning, she came to the ranch. No SUV blocking the road this time. She parked outside the locked gate. I walked over with Dakota beside me. Grant, we need to resolve this. I agree. Open the gate while the board reviews the matter. No. Her jaw tightened. This is hurting residents who had nothing to do with your violations. That's why I gave the board 14 days. Those fines can be discussed. Discussed. Adjusted if necessary. I almost smiled. Not withdrawn. Adjusted. She still believed she had the authority to issue them. What do you want? She asked. Accuracy. Meaning, stop calling my road Silver Pines property. We have long-standing access rights. Then prove them. We're reviewing the records. Good. I nodded toward the chain. When you're finished, we'll talk. She glanced at Dakota. This all started because you wouldn't follow one simple rule. No, Meredith. It started because you tried to enforce that rule somewhere you haven't shown you control. She left without another word. That afternoon, Silver Pines announced an emergency board meeting. 3 agenda items appeared in the notice: recreational corridor ownership, authority for enforcement against Holloway Ranch, status of preserve access. Claire called 10 minutes later. Bring every red envelope. All four, especially all four. I looked toward the ranch office. The envelopes were stacked beside Dad's silver pocket watch. 4 fines totaling $3,600. A survey, a deed, an access agreement, and now an HOA email claiming outright ownership. Meredith had started this by telling me where I couldn't ride my horse. Then she doubled down by telling hundreds of homeowners that my road belonged to them. The meeting was scheduled for Thursday at 7. Claire told me not to expect fireworks. I wasn't looking for any. By then, I understood something Meredith still didn't. The loudest thing in that room wouldn't be an argument. It would be the moment someone asked her to point to the document that made Holloway Ranch property belong to Silver Pines, and she had nothing to put on the table. Meredith walked into Thursday's meeting carrying the Green Trail map like it was a deed. Claire noticed it too. Good, she whispered. The Silver Pines clubhouse was already packed. Folding chairs filled every aisle, residents lined the walls, and the low buzz of conversation stopped when the board chairman called the meeting to order. Meredith sat beneath the projector screen. I sat beside Claire with 4 red envelopes stacked inside my folder. The chairman began with the access closure. Meredith immediately raised her hand. For more than 20 years, Silver Pines has maintained established recreational use of this corridor. The projector lit up. A thick green line ran from the subdivision to Pine Creek County Preserve. Silver Pines Nature Trail. Meredith pointed toward it. Mr. Holloway has obstructed this community asset in retaliation for lawful enforcement. Claire didn't move. Neither did I. The chairman opened questions. Greg Foster stood first. Who owns the land beneath the green line? Meredith answered carefully. Silver Pines possesses long-standing access rights. Greg folded his arms. That's not what I asked. Murmurs moved through the room. Meredith looked toward the association attorney. He was studying a folder. The chairman called my name. I walked to the front and placed the 4 red envelopes on the table. One by one. $750. $1,400. $2,250. $3,600. These were issued because I rode my horse on that road. Meredith leaned toward her microphone. Because you repeatedly violated equestrian restrictions. On whose property? Silence. Claire stood. She handed the board's secretary copies of the county parcel map and my deed. The projector changed. Meredith's green line vanished. Black property boundaries appeared instead. Claire pointed toward Holloway Ranch. The route in question runs within this parcel. Then she displayed Dad's agreement. The room became quiet enough to hear the projector fan. This document describes the original access arrangement. Claire highlighted the clause. Permission may be terminated by the landowner upon 14 days written notice. The chairman leaned forward. Counsel, have you found a recorded document transferring ownership of this road to Silver Pines? The HOA attorney adjusted his glasses. Not in the materials reviewed. Meredith spoke quickly. Ownership and access rights are separate issues. Claire nodded. Absolutely. That answer seemed to surprise her. Claire continued. Which is why we're not asking anyone to assume that ownership alone resolves every possible access question. She turned toward the board. We're asking something narrower. Then she looked at Meredith's map. Which recorded document gives the Silver Pines authority to regulate horseback riding on the Holloway parcel? No one answered. The attorney opened another file. I have not identified documentation showing that the Holloway parcel is subject to the Silver Pines Declaration. A woman near the back said. Then why was he fined? The question spread through the room in whispers. Meredith's posture stiffened. The association relied on established recreational use provisions. The attorney looked toward her. Those provisions appear to govern properties subject to the declaration. For the first time, Meredith had nothing ready. The chairman requested an immediate recess. Residents stood in clusters. Nobody approached me. They approached the board. When the meeting resumed, the chairman announced that collection activity on my $3,600 balance would be suspended pending formal legal review. The gate would remain closed. Then Greg raised the old newsletter. I have one more question. He read the sentence aloud describing the Holloway family as allowing trail passage. Then he looked at Meredith. If the HOA knew this was permission, when did permission become ownership? Meredith stared at him. Behind her, the projector still showed my deed. Beside me sat 4 red envelopes. And inside my pocket, Dad's silver watch ticked softly against my leg. For weeks, Meredith had been measuring her authority in fines. That night, everyone in Silver Pines finally saw the problem. She could put any number she wanted on a red envelope. She still couldn't put her name on my land. The red envelopes were already on the boardroom table when Meredith walked in. That was intentional. 1 week had passed since the emergency meeting, enough time for Silver Pine's attorney to review the declaration, recorded plats, Dad's access agreement, county records, Meredith's enforcement notices, and the association's archive publications. The clubhouse was packed again. This time, nobody cared about the Green Trail map. The board chairman called the meeting to order and immediately turned to association counsel. The attorney stood. Our review addressed 3 separate questions: ownership, access, and enforcement authority. He projected the county parcel map. The roadway at issue lies within the Holloway parcel. Meredith folded her arms. He continued, "We have not identified a recorded conveyance transferring ownership of that roadway to Silver Pines." A murmur rolled across the room. Regarding access, historical documents indicate that neighborhood passage originated through an agreement with the Holloway family. That agreement contains a termination provision requiring 14 days written notice. Claire slid a copy of our certified notice forward. 14 days. Delivered. Completed. The attorney looked toward the board. Finally, we reviewed the violations issued to Mr. Holloway. There it was. The room went still. We have not identified documentation establishing that the Holloway parcel is subject to Silver Pines declaration. Accordingly, council does not recommend continued collection of the equestrian-related penalties presently assessed against Mr. Holloway. The chairman looked at the 4 envelopes. $3,600? Correct. A motion came from the opposite end of the table. Rescind all 4 violations. Terminate collection activity. Remove the balance from association records. The vote passed. Just like that, $3,600 vanished. Meredith leaned toward her microphone. If enforcement is resolved, Mr. Holloway should reopen the trail immediately. I stood. No. Several heads turned. Her eyes narrowed. You got your fines removed. This was never only about the fines. You are continuing to punish residents. I'm asking Silver Pines to stop treating permission like ownership. Claire placed a draft agreement on the table. If the association wants restored passage across Holloway Ranch, my client is willing to negotiate a new written license. The chairman picked it up. Claire summarized the terms. Defined pedestrian and bicycle hours. No motor vehicles. Insurance provisions. Annual contribution toward gravel, drainage, fencing, and gate maintenance. Written acknowledgement that the roadway remained Holloway property. Then she reached the final clause. Silver Pines will have no authority under this access license to restrict lawful equestrian activity conducted by the Holloway family on the Holloway parcel. Someone near the back laughed softly. Meredith didn't. You expect our residents to pay for something they've used freely for 20 years. I looked at her. My father paid for the gravel. She said nothing. He repaired the drainage. Nothing. He replaced fence posts, maintained the gate, and let your residents cross because he wanted good neighbors. I touched the first red envelope. Then your board fined me $750 for riding Dakota there. My finger moved across the others. $1,400, $2,250, $3,600. The chairman looked toward Meredith. She stared down at the table. I turned toward the residents. I never blamed you for using the road. You were invited. Then I looked back at the board. But I'll negotiate access. I paused. I won't negotiate ownership. That line ended the argument. The board voted to begin negotiations with Claire. Until a written agreement was completed, the cattle gate would remain locked. As people started leaving, Greg stopped beside me. Think you'll open it again? I looked through the clubhouse window toward the dark ridge beyond Silver Pines. Probably. When an open gate means permission again. Outside, I checked Dad's silver pocket watch. 8:42. For weeks, Meredith had tried to make me obey by increasing a number on red paper. In the end, those envelopes accomplished something she never intended. They forced everyone to read the documents underneath them. And once they did, Silver Pines finally understood the difference between having a trail on a map and owning the ground beneath it. 2 months later, I rode Dakota toward the cattle gate before sunrise. The frost was back. So was the silence. But the red envelopes were gone. Silver Pines and Claire had spent 7 weeks negotiating the new access license. Nobody rushed it this time. Every boundary, responsibility, and limitation was written plainly enough that nobody could later pretend not to understand it. The road remained Holloway property. Silver Pines residents received pedestrian and bicycle access during defined hours. No motor vehicles. The association agreed to contribute annually toward gravel, drainage, fencing, and gate maintenance. And buried in the legal language was the sentence I cared about most. Nothing in this agreement authorizes Silver Pines Community Association to restrict lawful equestrian activity conducted by the Holloway family within the Holloway parcel. I read it 3 times before signing. Dakota was officially permitted to be a horse on his own ranch. The $3,600 balance had already been erased. Claire obtained written confirmation that no collection activity remained and that all 4 violations had been removed from association records. Meredith's Green Trail map disappeared from the community website. So did Meredith. 6 weeks after the emergency meeting, Silver Pines held a special board election. She was no longer president afterward. I never asked for the vote count. I didn't need her humiliated. I needed the boundary respected. The new board president, Nathan Cole, visited me 3 days before the reopening. He came alone. No violation notices. No legal threats. Just 2 cups of coffee. We should have checked the records before any of this happened, he said. I looked toward the ridge. My father never minded people crossing. I know. He just expected them to remember they were crossing somebody else's land. Nathan nodded. They will now. Opening morning, several residents waited beyond the gate. Greg was there. So were families, runners, dog walkers, and a few people I recognized from the meetings. Nobody complained. Nobody demanded anything. I checked Dad's silver pocket watch. 5:59, Dakota shifted beneath me. The second hand moved. 6 o'clock, I dismounted. The chain was cold in my hands. For a moment, I remembered Dad standing beside that same gate years earlier, explaining why he had agreed to let future neighbors cross our ranch. An open gate could mean trust. It didn't erase the boundary. I took out the key. Click. The lock opened. I removed the chain and pulled the gate inward. The hinges gave the same long groan they'd made when I closed it. Greg smiled from the other side. Morning, Grant. Morning. He glanced at Dakota. You two going first? I put my boot into the stirrup. That's the arrangement. Greg stepped aside. Your road. 2 words. That was all. No projector. No attorney. No fine. Just an acknowledgement that should never have required any of them. Dakota carried me through. His hooves struck the gravel slowly. Behind us, Silver Pines residents began crossing again. Near the fence, a little boy pointed at Dakota. Is this your horse trail? I stopped and looked back. It's our ranch road. The boy's father gave me an uncertain smile. I smiled back. You're welcome to use it. The boy reached out, and Dakota lowered his nose toward his hand. For 20 years, my family had shared this road because we wanted neighbors, not enemies. Meredith mistook that generosity for surrender. She thought repeated use created authority. Then she tried to prove it with 4 red envelopes. In the end, those fines didn't take control away from me. They reminded me to prove where control had always been. I opened Dad's pocket watch once more. The silver case caught the morning light. He'd warned me years ago never to confuse an open gate with an abandoned boundary. Now Silver Pines understood why. I slipped the watch into my pocket and rode toward the preserve with Dakota's shadow stretching across the gravel. Dad was right. An open gate could mean trust. But trust only meant something when everyone remembered who had chosen to open it.